Welcome to the Pioneer Podcast, brought to you by Lex Libertas. This is Ernst Roots. Ever since we published the Lex Libertas plan a little more than a month ago, we have received a flood of messages of support, new sign-ups as contributors, people who have volunteered to become more actively involved through the Lex Libertas Club, and also a lot of questions about the details of the plan. In short, we explained that we intend to promote self-governance for the peoples of South Africa by implementing a series of actions that we collectively describe as the Lex Libertas flywheel. The flywheel consists of 5 interconnected steps. These are continually doing research about the current state of affairs in South Africa, what South Africa could potentially become, and how to bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be. Continually growing support among the various communities in South Africa for the notion that the political system needs to be decentralized and that autonomy and self-governance is the solution as opposed to centralization and government dependency. Continually growing support for these ideas outside of South Africa on the international stage. That especially includes support for the notion that the pursuit of self-governance in South Africa is a legitimate pursuit and that those who pursue this ought to be supported. Continually taking strategic actions within South Africa based on our growing support base within South Africa and abroad with the intention not only of growing support even further, but promoting the notion of self-governance and autonomy in practice, and continually promoting de facto realities within South Africa that supports the promotion of self-governance. With this, we mean that the void that has been created as a result of government incompetence and disillusionment with the political system has to be filled with new realities where communities simply take control of the things that matter to them, whether that be safety, trade and industry, education, or other spheres of communal life. Because in doing this, we are creating a new constitutional dispensation from the ground up, which will eventually receive more formal recognition. We believe that these 5 steps are interconnected, that we should not choose between them because we have to do all of them at the same time. But also, in strengthening each of these 5 steps, we strengthen the other. And so, as this flywheel turns faster, we move closer to our goal. We have also explained that in the pursuit of this quest, we have identified 2 short-term strategic objectives, one external and one internal. Our short-term external goal is to bring the discussion about decentralization and self-governance into the mainstream political discussion in South Africa in a way that is tangible and measurable. Our short-term internal goal is to recruit at least 4,000 monthly contributors for Lex Libertas, because it is only through the support of our contributors that we are able to execute this plan. With all of that said, I have good news to share. I want to use this episode of the Pioneer Podcast to give feedback. I want to explain to you the extent to which we are already making progress toward the achievement not only of these 2 overarching short-term objectives, but in the promotion of our vision, which is a viable political dispensation for the peoples of South Africa, through the 5 components of our flywheel. Lex Libertas is not an island. In fact, it is written into the values in our business plan that we recognize that we are part of an ecosystem. We do not believe that our big, hairy, audacious goal could be achieved alone, nor that it is in anyone's interest to present ourselves as the sole player in this regard. The more people and organizations we can get on board for this objective, the better. And so in this video, I want to share with you what we are already doing, what has already happened as a result of our work, but also what others in this sphere have done that also contribute to the promotion of our vision. We are not in the business of claiming credit, and I will ensure that credit is given where credit is due. So let's start with our internal objective. As I'm recording this, Lex Libertas has approximately 1,500 contributors. Of these contributors, about 800 are monthly contributors. We are grateful for each and every one of our contributors, and I would like to encourage you to contribute in whichever way you prefer. But I have to say that for financial planning purposes, we have decided to emphasize monthly contributions. If you are interested in making a contribution to our work, you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. As far as our primary short-term external objective is concerned, I can already give feedback about the extent to which we are doing this, about the extent to which we are bringing the conversation about decentralization and autonomy into the mainstream. And I will do this with reference to the 5 elements of the flywheel. Firstly, research. Lex Libertas has published various research reports on important topics in South Africa with special focus on the need for self-governance as a solution to the crisis in South Africa. These include the Truth Be Told report, in which we share the personal stories and testimonies of people that have been affected by farm attacks, racial exclusion, the targeting of property rights, and government collapse. And the Reclaiming Freedom report, in which we evaluate the crisis in South Africa and explain the necessity of self-governance as the solution. These reports were not just published, but were discussed on various media outlets, podcasts, and conferences, especially in the United States and in Europe. We are currently busy with research about various forms of self-governance in practice throughout the world, and the extent to which these forms of self-governance could be applied to South Africa. Secondly, local support. In the last few months, and especially after publishing our plan, we have received significant support from a variety of outposts of South African society, with people informing us that they support the Lex Libertas position on decentralizing the system and promoting self-governance. These include various communities, institutions, think tanks, researchers, podcasters, and politicians. The DA's mayoral candidate for Pretoria, Celia Brink, recently explained on this podcast that he is an ardent supporter of institutional federalism and the notion that government should regard community institutions not as a threat, but as an ally. I recently participated in a discussion with David and Sarah and Martin van Staden from the Free Market Foundation about the need for decentralization and some ways in which this could happen. I was also recently interviewed by the young upcoming Zulu podcaster Filani, in which we discussed these very issues. There are also many pending podcast invitations issued to Lex Libertas over the last few months. Furthermore, we have started reaching out to what I could reluctantly describe as Black African communities in South Africa. I say this reluctantly because it's important for context, even though I don't think that people should be defined by their race. We are in the process of arranging discussions with leaders in these communities about the need for self-governance, a matter with which they strongly agree. There is also growing support from within the business community for taking a stand against destructive policies of the South African government. It is no secret by now that the only reason why these destructive policies are still in place in South Africa is not because the government has the capacity to enforce them, but through the compliance of the private sector. Currently, we see an unprecedented number of voices in the business community taking a stand against these destructive policies. Here we see institutions like Sakeliga taking the lead, but there is also tremendous work being done by think tanks such as the Free Market Foundation, institutions like Solidarity, the IRR, and many others. We also see business leaders like Rob Hersov unashamedly taking a stand, and a growing number of CEOs proclaiming that BEE is a destructive force. These voices are not going to go away. They are only going to get stronger. We are grateful for the fantastic work that is already done by other institutions in this regard, and we know that Lex Libertas can and will play a significant role in fast-tracking public support for decentralization and especially for self-governance as the solution. I want to take a moment to thank you for watching and following the content on this channel. And I also want to encourage you to like this video and to subscribe to this channel to ensure that our audience is broadened. Then thirdly, foreign support or international support. From the get-go, it might seem that obtaining international support is the most difficult component of our flywheel. Yet, from a SWOT analysis perspective, our international network is one of our greatest strengths. This is also the area in which we have made the most progress. Think about it for a moment. Over the last few months, we have discussed the need for a decentralized South Africa and the promotion of self-governance in South Africa with people like Tucker Carlson, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Gaetz, Charlie Kirk, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Tim Pool, the Epoch Times, the Daily Signal, and even CNN, to name just a few. I've been invited, together with Joost Strydom from the Urania movement, to be the Toastmaster at the upcoming gala dinner hosted by the New York Young Republican Club in Manhattan later this year. We have spoken at CPAC and the 5th International Geopolitical Summit in Budapest, with more coming up. Other than that, we have had one-on-one discussions and done presentations and speeches at more than 20 think tanks in Washington, D.C. and countries throughout Europe. We have had several meetings with the American State Department, and our message has been consistent. South Africa has failed. The failure is not merely because of corruption and bad laws, because corruption and bad laws are not the problem in itself, but symptoms of a deeper-rooted crisis. The deeper-rooted crisis is the fact that the political system has become detached from realities on ground level. The solution is to bring the political system back to reality. And the way to achieve this is through self-governance. Then, practical action. We have made it clear from the start that local and international support in itself is not very helpful if it doesn't translate into practical action. Also in this front, we have made progress. We have spoken at several conferences and we are organizing conferences in South Africa. There are currently 2 sets of proposed legislation in the United States that implies action with regard to South Africa. We are publishing a report on the immoral, destructive and unethical nature of what is misleadingly described as black economic empowerment in South Africa, with a petition to have it officially recognized as unethical by the American government. We have already had several conversations with members of the European Parliament about ways in which we can introduce our cause as a topic of discussion at the European Union. We are particularly speaking with the various conservative factions, and we have some very creative plans and ideas on how to do this, which we hope to roll out in 2026. We are also speaking with some influential people working within the United Nations that are sympathetic to our cause about some very particular things that we could do to increase our support base internationally. This is not to say that we think that we will achieve much through the General Assembly of the United Nations, but that there are various offices and people working within the United Nations that are open to our message. Perhaps most importantly, at least in the short run, we are setting up the Lex Libertas Club as a platform through which volunteers can become actively involved with our work. Our preliminary way of explaining what involvement through the club would imply is that it would fulfill a threefold function. The first is that it would provide a platform for social events and activities with like-minded people. The second is that it would focus significantly on self-improvement through things like a book club, political training courses, especially for young people, discussions and workshops, and so forth. And third, that the club would be involved with tangible action in the promotion of self-governance in South Africa. This would include discussions and debates, podcasts, petitions, the arranging of events, outreach to various communities and institutions within South Africa and abroad, and some activities that might be described as somewhat activistic in nature. There will also be a significant focus on research, where we intend to provide for members of the club to submit their own research, and we have already received dozens of research papers written by our contributors, with the aim of arranging conferences and workshops where these contributors can present their papers in order to facilitate discussion on the matters raised. If you have already indicated through our newsletter that you would like to be involved, you have probably received a phone call from Pieter Ben Roos by now to inquire about your availability and to explain how we intend to roll out the plan. If you are interested in becoming more actively involved, I would like to encourage you to click on the link below. And then fifthly, de facto realities. We have also made it clear that significant constitutional change would depend not so much on the extent to which we can win an election, but on the extent to which we can arrange and change realities on ground level. This is important because, contrary to popular belief, political and constitutional arrangements do not work in such a way that the reality on ground level has to comply with the legal framework. It works the other way around. The legal framework has to recognize realities on ground level. And so, as we have explained in South Africa, a leadership vacuum is developing. People have lost faith in the system and they have lost faith in politicians. Also, the government does not have the authority or the capacity that it proclaims to have. The state isn't there when we need it to keep us safe, but it also isn't there when it wants to enforce its own ideas, which tend to be destructive. But the thing with vacuums is that they naturally tend to be filled. And so the question is, what is going to fill the vacuum? What is going to fill the void? We already see that the void is being filled. In some cases, it is being filled with bad actors, such as organized crime, mafias, and gangs. In other cases, the void is already filled with good actors. The good actors filling the void are well-organized communities simply taking charge of what is important to them. It's wishful thinking to believe that the South African government is going to become more efficient. We can accept that it is going to become more inefficient and plan for that. And again, contrary to popular belief, that this is not necessarily a bad thing. A government with very bad ideas that happen to be unable to implement or enforce them without the willful compliance of those they wish to suppress provides opportunities for well-functioning communities to take a stand. And we already see much of this happening. We can already see well-organized communities taking charge of their own safety through communal safety initiatives, communities taking the initiative with their own education, and principled business leaders finding creative ways to work around destructive government policies, and even going as far as refusing to comply in certain cases. These are all methods in which new de facto realities are created in South Africa as we speak. Many institutions, including AfriForum, the School Support Network of the Solidarity Movement, private schooling initiatives, and business interest groups are doing great work in this regard. The creation of de facto realities is going to become increasingly important. We need to fast track such initiatives. We need to do it strategically. We need to support those that are already involved with this, and we need to implement our own initiatives in this regard. And I have to say, before we finish, that we should know by now that we are going to see increased cases of civil disobedience in South Africa. And that is a good thing. By civil disobedience, I mean that communities are going to take a stand against destructive laws by simply refusing to comply. And ironically, the ANC itself has set the example for this during the 1970s and 1980s. This is not entirely new. It is because of civil disobedience that the e-toll system failed. It is because of civil disobedience that the outlandish COVID-19 lockdown had to be brought to an end. And it could potentially be because of civil disobedience that the vast network of discriminatory race laws in South Africa becomes irrelevant. And so this is where we stand. This is why I and the team at Lex Libertas are optimistic about the future. We are in the fight of our lives, and even if you don't want to believe that we are winning, you should at least agree that those who are trying to subject us are losing. We can say, like J.R. Tolkien, that things are now set in motion that cannot be undone. The success of our pursuit would not depend on the behavior of those in power, but on our own involvement, on the extent to which we, each and every one of us, where we find ourselves, are willing and able to do our small part. Our flywheel is already turning. We are already publishing crucial research. We are already growing our local support base. We have already received significant international support. We are already taking practical action, and the political and leadership vacuum is already being filled. But we are in a race against time. We need to get this flywheel to turn faster and to increase its acceleration. In doing this, we need your support. You don't need to do much, but we need you to sign up as a contributor, because doing so helps us to empower our team to do these things faster and more efficiently. But if you want to do more than that, we would be very happy to meet you and engage with you through the Lex Libertas Club, which we are setting up as we speak. There is a lot of work to do, but it is the best, most enjoyable and most fulfilling work that a person could possibly do. Not only are we working to create a better future for our children, we are having the time of our lives while doing so. If you would like to support this channel and the work that we are doing at Lex Libertas to work toward a more sustainable and a more viable political dispensation for South Africa, I would like to encourage you to sign up as a contributor by clicking on the link in the description.